Now, you'll recall that just yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa celebrated the significant progress his ruling African National Congress has made from the end of apartheid 30 years ago to this year's historic election. He says his party is looking for a decisive victory, despite various scientific reports that have shown that the ANC would not acquire the 50+1% required to govern the party as the majority. Let's unpack this now. The January 8th statement. We're joined by political analyst Ebrahim Harvey and political commentator Yolokazi Mfuto. A very good morning to you both. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, we heard ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa essentially saying, bring it on. I mean, as I read the Sunday Times headline, that's what it reads, a very bold headline there. In his address, he signaled election season with a combative speech warning that the ANC is not on its knees in the face of the current opposition onslaught. What stood out for you as you listened to that? Perhaps, Dr. Harvey, let me start with you.
Hi, good morning, thanks, and good morning to the listeners, viewers. No, there's a whole lot to be said, you know. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to respond to. There are a number of things. Let me pick out the most important. Firstly, our President Cyril Ramaphosa fails dismally to understand that there's a very big difference. It's in the literature. It's very well established. A division difference between what is called formal democracy, the right to vote, a whole lot of other democratic freedoms, and substantive democracy. Substantive democracy has got to do with water, sanitation, electricity, housing, education, etc. The ANC has been a dismal failure. That's why we're sitting with the biggest socio-economic crisis, not only in post-apartheid South Africa, my dear, in the entire history since the Union of South Africa was formed in 1910. The biggest: black hunger, poverty, malnutrition, unemployment, everything you can talk of. Look at, besides the Eskom electricity crisis, look at what has happened to water, sanitation, and sewage. I was in the black townships from 1972, let me tell you. It is true. And when he says that people are lying about the conditions, then he is the one who is the biggest liar. The conditions, believe it or not, were incomparably better under apartheid in the black townships. You know where I was from 72 than it is today. It is falling apart in every single respect. What Ramaphosa, this is a blunt, blatant electioneering speech that he made, you know. But a number, he should listen to Amilcar Cabral, the Guinea-Bissau revolutionary. Claim no easy victories, tell no lies. There is a number of lies, and the irony of it all is he pokes at people and he calls them liars, who says that the ANC, the conditions are worse today in the townships, and he says that it's untrue and they're lies. It is Ramaphosa who needs to get his head very clear about what has happened. And I think he's done the ANC a massive disservice and an insult to the people. I mean, look what he's had to say about social grants. I mean, how can you say that in 1999 there was 2.5 billion and today there's 28 million people grants? That is a massive indictment of the ANC and a slap in the face of those 28 million beneficiaries. How can you live on that meager grant? I mean, you know, it's just terrible how he has tried to make capital, political capital out of this, when in fact he fails to realize it's a massive indictment, very negative on ANC rule, that you've got a jump from 2.5 to 28 beneficiaries. He fails to realize it. I mean, look what he says about the constitution. Oh, the best constitution in the world. Despite the best constitution in the world, purportedly, we're the protest capital of the world, my dear. From June 2004 in the Free State up until now, 20 years, unstoppable protests, fierce protests like you've never seen even during the apartheid times, under black ANC rule.
Yeah. He
doesn't deal with that. You know, you got the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Not one single important socio-economic right has been won. People are worse off today in material socio-economic terms, believe me, than they were during the apartheid times. It's established. The scholars would laugh at him. The researchers would laugh at him. I don't know what he has done, really.
Yeah.
I think he's done the ANC a massive disservice. And I think the detractors of the ANC and the opposition parties would be jumping on this. It is Ramaphosa who is lying to the electorate and the public.
We'll touch on opposition parties in just a moment. Let me give Yolokazi a chance to also weigh in. Yolokazi, as you listened, what stood out for you?
Thank you so much, Mpo, and good morning. Well, what stood out for me was the fact that this was one of the bravest speeches that the president, or January 8th statement that the president has delivered. And secondly, it was also pacifying for people in the ANC, but the masses in general. The president focused more on what they have done. It was a very reflective speech on what the ANC has done. And secondly, on what the ANC has done, he tried to kind of expand on what the ANC has done. For instance, when was mentioning on the unemployment and employment of people, the 8 million and the increase to 16.9 million people, it's also quite pacifying because many people who've been employed in that terrain is because there was COVID-19 and it's temporary jobs. So you cannot necessarily use those states as something that this is massive, we've done great for the country. Secondly, the other thing that stood out for me was the fact that the president spoke as if the ANC is not necessarily in government, but the ANC is opposition. They spoke as if now we are going to start doing things. I'm like, no. It is important that the ANC takes up the lead to actually lead the pack in ensuring that service delivery is done for people in government. Two, it is the responsibility of the ANC to ensure that corruption is rooted out, to provide education, healthcare, and because they are leading government. So when the president was speaking, he did give a way that they are now their opposition, even though the speech itself and the sentiments shared there, they were quite very much decisive. I commend them for that, to take up a decisive stance. But the fact that what Doctor is saying is that that's true. The ANC has not done much for people of South Africa, but it's not necessarily that they are not able to do much. There is resources to actually ensure that the ANC delivers for their people, but the ANC is refusing because of the lack of good administration, and secondly, the lack of good transparency. There's a lot of corruption as well. But the speech in it all, it did give ANC comrades the fact that now we are going to elections. It's a good campaign speech, and we are going to see what is going to happen in SONA and the other manifestos that are going to launch, and then we are going to see what directions the ANC taking. And maybe the polls that we had initially that are saying that the ANC might not win by outright majority, maybe again the conversation is going to change based on yesterday's proceedings.
Yeah. Dr. Harvey, 2024 concludes President Ramaphosa's first term in his capacity as head of state. I mean, with this being a very busy year insofar as elections are also concerned, and a lot of criticism when it comes to service delivery and the many broken promises, what do you think needs to happen for the ANC to indeed emerge as victorious as it sets its sights on? I mean, the president spoke about going over 50% come election time.
No, I think Ramaphosa has got blinkers on, really. You know, this is an election hearing. The ANC is the ruling party, although in very serious decline. You know, it's very evident. You see, they lost 2016 and 2021 in Gauteng, the powerhouse of production. The ANC is on a steep decline. They're very worried. But key and critical is to do what he swore he would do in his New Dawn speech. And just look how it has turned out. He has failed to implement. He said he's waiting for just give you another example, a glaring example problem with his speech, corruption. You know, remember, this is the same president who says that when you talk of corruption, ANC is accused number one. He failed to implement the recommendation of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, which he said he's waiting for eagerly. And when it comes a year later, because several ministers in his cabinet are fingered seriously, though no charges have been laid, no action has been taken. The committee that is appointed to investigate whether to charge or not charge, you're going to see how it's timed. It's timed so that it will happen post-election, not before the election. And really, I think that it's rather too late in the day. I think the ANC will never escape. They're going to absolutely lose. And with MK party, Zuma emerging, I can tell you the Zuma party is going to take a big slice of the traditional ANC supporters away. You can see how much traction that MK party is gaining, no matter what you and I say about Zuma. It is massive. You see how it's growing not only in KZN, but mainly in KZN. I think it's too late in the day for the ANC. There are a lot of opportunities to prevent what is impending for me. There is no doubt about it. In fact, listening to Ramaphosa only deepens that realization by me, that the ANC is going to drop well below 50. In fact, as I've been saying for months, 40 to 45%. It's too late in the day for the ANC to change anything, really. I don't believe that they're going to make any significant changes to alter the impending electoral defeat in the 2024 elections.
Yolokazi, as Dr. Harvey touches on former President Jacob Zuma, without mentioning him by name, we saw how Ramaphosa also took a veiled swipe at his predecessor, warning the crowd about leaders who want to destroy the ANC from within, and also labeling the Umkhonto weSizwe party as a rebel movement, urging ANC supporters to be vigilant and not to fall for radical talk. How much of a headache is Zuma for the ANC in your regard?
Well, the former President Jacob Zuma is definitely a headache in the ANC currently. And also the position he took to actually address people that is going to support MK took the ANC by surprise and took a large portion of people, particularly in the KZN, as Doc was saying. However, now, when President Cyril Ramaphosa was addressing the crowd and speaking of snakes and people are destroying the ANC, and we say this is good riddance at some point. And remember that even a couple of years ago, in the same vein, they spoke ill of the former president of the Youth League, Julius Malema, when he was leading establishing the AFF, when he was expelled and he established the EFF. Yes, they should be worried that a lot of membership is leaving the ANC, joining Umkhonto weSizwe. But this is kind of become a constant thing with the ANC. When people leave, they leave with a huge portion. Not to say that they should not be worried, but it's something that has happened before. Then it becomes incumbent on the ANC on what do they do now that they've lost some membership to UMK, right? And how do you ensure that you garner more votes so that you can cover the space, as we've done when COPE was established, when the EFF was established, and other organizations have been established by members coming from the ANC. I do not think that they should treat this as something that is new, even though now it's done differently because it's done by a former state president, Jacob Zuma. But now it's something that has happened before. But definitely he is a headache, and MK is gaining traction. But maybe they would not necessarily make it that much in Parliament, getting a lot of seats, because the numbers that we've seen are not as great so that they can get many people on the ballot and also get many people in Parliament to maybe unseat the ANC with other parties.
Dr. Harvey, just in closing, we know that following 30 years of being a parliamentarian, we heard ANC senior member Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma expressing her intent to retire. We've also learned that she's declined the ANC parliamentary list interview. And, she leaves Parliament having recently caused controversy. I mean, voting against the ANC in 2 motions. What are your thoughts around that? I mean, what we've seen on social media are people alluding to say that she will be joining the MK party. What are your thoughts around this?
I wasn't surprised at all. You must remember, this is the former wife of the President Zuma, and still ongoing relations, and so she's warmed up to the MK party. You can see, I won't be surprised that she throws in a lot, but it's symptomatic. You're not going to find an answer in itself. It's symptomatic of the malaise that has gripped the ANC. The ANC is going down, and don't forget, one of the biggest problems Ramaphosa continues to defend, the root cause of corruption of SOEs is cadre deployment. He defends the policy of cadre deployment and draws weak analogies with cadre deployment in other countries, forgetting that the level of understanding and conscious education of the ANC cadres cannot be compared with what you find elsewhere in the world. And don't forget, the EFF was born out of Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa chaired the disciplinary committee that expelled Malema. I don't think people realize. Just like the Eskom crisis, Zuma put him in charge of the Eskom crisis in 2014. What has happened to Eskom? Anyway, there's limited time. I just leave it there.
Thanks. I'm glad you could voice it all out. Thank you for your time. Let me thank you both, political analyst Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, as well as political commentator Yolokazi Mfuto, just weighing in on the back of the January 8th statement and other matters on the political front. In just a